for Melbourne time, and maybe also good night for some audience in another part of the world, in the north part. Welcome to the first round of Universitas Islam Internasional Indonesia, or UIIU, and Deakin University joint lecture series with the theme Leadership and Management in Schools and Higher Education. First of all, let me introduce myself. I'm Dr. Destina Wahyuwinarti. I'm the lecturer at the Faculty of Education UIIU, and I will be the moderator for today's event. All right, to start with, let me read a few housekeeping notes. We would like to ask all audiences to mute the mic during the welcome speech as well as during the presentations. And also, you may put a question on question and answer button that was already prepared by the team, and you are invited to speak later on if you have any question that you want to say directly. At that time, please turn on your mic if you want to speak directly. And also, for your information, each speaker will present in 15 minutes. We will go in a row, and then we will have the question and answer session afterward. And during the presentation session, you are welcome to keep posting your questions in question and answer buttons. And last but not least, we hope that all of you respect everyone's different view and opinion during this public lecture. We love to hear everyone's opinion, of course, but at the same time, we respect everyone's different view. So this joint lecture aim is to provide a platform for speakers in both universities and also audiences to share their opinion and expertise. And for this session is about leadership and management in schools and higher education. And for your information, also, this is an ongoing lecture series in 2023. All right, so to start the program, we will have welcome speech from both universities' representatives. And for the first welcome speech, we would like to invite the Vice Director for Research, Cooperation, and Community Engagement of UIIU, Professor Jamhari Ma'ruf. To Professor Jamhari, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Destina. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Very good morning and very good afternoon for participants in Australia and also other parts, in other words. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to warmly welcome you to Lecture Series 2023 organized by the Indonesian International Islamic University and Deakin University. This lecture series is one of the many fruitful partnerships between UIIU and Deakin University. I am delighted to have such esteemed individuals join us today on this historic occasion. Last year, UIIU received a grant from Australian Award to learn how best Australian universities have achieved academic excellence. 25 leaders, lecturers, and staff of our university visit 8 best Australian universities. We are very thankful that Alfred Deakin Institute of Deakin University has helped manage this Australian Award grant. This lecture series is an exciting and significant milestone for both institutions as we deepen our partnership. I sincerely thank the Faculty of Education at UIIU under the leadership of Professor Nina Nurmila for organizing this event. Most importantly, I would like to thank Professor Matthew Clark, Pro-Vice Chancellor for Research Development, and the Alfred Deakin Professor, who will give the opening remarks for this lecture series. I would also like to thank Bonnie Yim, Associate Dean, International and Engagement, Faculty of Arts and Education, who played a crucial role in organizing this series. Today's lecture series will bring 2 excellent speakers, Dr. Bambang Sumintono from the Faculty of Education of Indonesian International Islamic University and Dr. Cheryl Ryan from Deakin University. They will provide a presentation on leadership management in schools and higher education, which is a very timely topic right now. Another important partnership is that 3 top students of our university from the Faculty of Education students will be visiting Deakin University on a short-term exchange program, strengthening the faculty's cooperation. This is just one of the many ways to improve our relationships. Last but not least, I would like to welcome all of you warmly and hope you will find this lecture series both educational and thought-provoking. Terima kasih. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam. Thank you, Professor Jamhari Ma'ruf, for the welcoming speech. And for the next welcome speech, we would like to invite Pro-Vice Chancellor of Research Development and Alfred Deakin, Professor Matthew Clark. To Professor Clark, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Destina. I'm very, very pleased to be able to participate in this first of these series of lectures that are organised between the University Islam International Indonesia and Deakin University. I'm very pleased to actually be on campus this morning at the Islamic International University in Indonesia, and very looking forward to meeting colleagues from that university. Deakin University is a young university. We're less than 50 years old, but of course, Universitas Islam International Indonesia University is even younger than that. And I think it's so important that universities across Australia and Indonesia look to each other to share knowledge, to share wisdom, and to see how we can build each other's expertise in a range of areas. And I know that Bonnie Yim has worked very hard with the Faculty of Education here at the Islamic University to see what opportunities might exist to work between both universities. And I'm very grateful for Bonnie's work. I'm also very pleased to welcome and thank Cheryl Ryan, Dr. Cheryl Ryan from Deakin University, who is going to present along with Dr. Bambang on this very first lecture series. I envisage that the relationship between Deakin University and Universitas Islam International Indonesia University will only strengthen over time. I understand that this relationship is coming from a very strong base, but I do envisage that the relationship will only grow in strength over time, and the exchange of students in the coming months is a wonderful example of the growth and the importance of that relationship. I very much look forward to this series being successful, this series of lectures being successful. And on behalf of Deakin University, I'm very, very proud that it is occurring and very much looking forward to further exchanges and partnerships and collaboration. We have much to learn from each other, and we've demonstrated how important that is. And it's wonderful that we're taking these opportunities to do so now into the future. So I will stop and pass back to you, Destina, but very grateful to be welcomed onto this wonderful campus. It's the most beautiful campus I think I have seen in any country, at any university, and I know my colleagues at Deakin University will be very keen to visit whenever that opportunity occurs in the future. And of course, we look forward to welcoming colleagues and students from your university to our campuses in Melbourne and Geelong. So thank you and good luck with this morning, and congratulations on this wonderful initiative.
Thank you very much, Professor Matthew Clark, for the welcoming speech. And Professor Jamhari and Professor Clark, please stay for a while. We're going to have a photo session together. And also all panelists, would you please turn on the camera so we can have a photo session together with Professor Clark and Professor Jamhari as well. May I invite Mbak Afra to help us for taking the picture? Thank you.
Okay, we'll wait for Bu Charina to open her camera.
Bonnie, can you please also open your camera? Thank you. Charina, can you please open your camera as well? Okay, maybe Charina couldn't open the camera, so we can just take a picture, Mbak Afra. Oh, it's there. Please kindly count so we know how to act.
1, 2, 3. Okay, one more time. 1, 2, 3. Okay, that's great.
Thank you very much, Mbak Afra, and thank you very much for all welcome speech from Professor Jamhari and Professor Clark. Now let's step to our main program, the speech from both speakers. Today we have Bambang Sumintono and Ibu Cheryl. I call Bapak and Ibu like in Bahasa Indonesia. I will start introducing our first speaker, Dr. Bambang Sumintono. Let me share my screen first. Can everyone see the screen of Pak Bambang? Okay, I'm just read it because I can't see the screen. So Pak Bambang Sumintono, PhD, is a head of a doctorate program at the Faculty of Education UIII, and he is also editorial board member of journal School Leadership and Management. And Pak Bambang recent publication is Islamic Educational Leadership, Southeast Asia Perspective. This is a book chapter in Islamic-based educational leadership, administration, and management about challenging expectation through global critical. Dr. Bambang Sumintono, education background is from Universitas Terbuka on her undergraduate, and his master is from Flinders University, Adelaide, Australia, and he pursued his doctorate degree in Victoria University of Wellington, New Zealand. So Pak Bambang, without further ado, I will allow you to start the presentation of school leadership in the School Leadership Research Reflecting the Local Knowledge Development in Post-New Order Indonesia. Thank you. Time is yours, Pak Bambang.
All right, thank you, Bu Dr. Destina. So, very good morning to all of you. So, thank you for joining us the first lecture series between UIIU and Deakin University. So, let me share the screen from here about my presentation. All right, everybody can see this one? All right, so thank you for the time and opportunity to share about my small research project. So this is a research project asking by editor from University of Manitoba and University of Science Malaysia. So I work together with Dr. Hasan Hariri from Universitas Lampung and Dr. Erika from State Islamic University, Yogyakarta. Right, so the intention of this research is we want to do some kind of mapping what happened in the last 20 years about school leadership research in Indonesia, particularly about the paper that written in Bahasa Indonesia, in Indonesian language. So it's something that only local can access and can understand. Right, so why 20 years? Because this is the beginning of new era in Indonesia. And then we would like to see what happened in the last 20 years in terms of school leadership research. Right, so let me give you a background about Indonesia. So as you can see the map on the left-hand side, so comparison between Indonesia and Malaysia, in Australia, really sorry. We are the closest neighbor, right? So not very far away. Here, compared to New Zealand, for example, we are closer than that. Okay, so Indonesian education system is very big. Okay, we can say the fourth largest education system in the world. So we have around 50 million students, taught by 4 million teachers, and then in the more than 216,000 schools, and then Indonesian follow the school system, 6 years primary, 3 years junior secondary, and 3 years senior secondary. Unique to Indonesia, the school system are divided by 2 administrative systems. So we have a public secular system, okay, under Ministry of Education and Culture, and the rest is administered by Islamic education under Ministry of Religious Affairs. So you can see it's complex, is a complicated system, okay, in terms of size also. Okay, to give you a background about Indonesian education development, so we can start from the new old order era under Sukarno. So you can see the pictures on the right-hand side. President Sukarno, what become a role model as a teacher. So talking about how to spell alphabet, for example, in this case, right? So after the independence, 1945 to 1950, so the situation is not really good for the education, because we still have a fight with the Dutch in terms of defending the independence. Okay, so we starting the education system. So many historians say that we are restarting the system in 1950. And then what we found that the student enrollment increased 5 times compared to the colonial era. Okay, for cater to that number, so we have to recruit so many people to become teachers. So lots of training, even very short training to prepare them to become teachers. And we still manage the system using centralized system like the colonial government. In 1966, General Suharto come to power, become a president, and then that era until 1998, we call it as a new order. Okay, and we have a very big changing in terms of education development. The increase of oil price in 1970s, okay, so that makes that Indonesian have much money to spend in terms of the budget, and the increase of education budget is really astonishing. So it increased 1,200% in terms of that. So because of that money, we can build so many schools. So we call the program as SD Impress, so meaning that instructional president for primary school. Okay, so recruit 100,000 teachers. So there's a lot of massive teachers training. Okay, one of the characteristic of this new order government, they are emphasized on what they call it as stability, growth, and efficiency, where Nielsen call it as bureaucratic authoritarian states. So relying on numbers in terms of, for example, participation rate, in terms of how many schools and that kind of thing, right? So Indonesia have a big change when in 1998, because of the Asian financial crisis, and that we have a massive student demonstration, and then we what we call is the all new order of Suharto's collapse, and then the vice president in that era become president, which is Dr. B.J. Habibie. So Habibie government, they introduced really drastic to the system, what we call legalize, what they call it as decentralized system, that's including education sector, transfer the power to the district level. Okay, from previously very centralized system in one night, then administer at the district level, and then introduce a new education system, a new law of educational system, and also the aspiration from the teachers and lecturers also created the teachers and lecture law in 2005. Okay, so regard to the school principles, so what we call the way we select, the way we train also completely different. Okay, in the previous era, old order or new order, the way we prepare principal, most likely the same thing like we prepare civil servant, right? So in this reform era, so they introduce much more systematic principal training, and then it is also managed by new institution. They call it as Lembaga Pengembangan and Pemberdayaan Kepala Sekolah. Is a kind of principal pre-training centralized. Okay, and they insist that if you want to become principal, you have at least 5 competencies. Okay, so this is also a debate about that one, right? Right. So in this study, so we rely on the public access database, so you can access it for free. Is it what we call as developed by Directorate General of Higher Education in Indonesia? They call it as Garuda, or short for Garba Rujukan Digital. So it's a digital reference collection. So you can access this Garuda in www.garuda.kemdikbud.go.id, right? So the intention to use this database because those who understand Indonesian language can read the paper, right? So if we look to the many review literature in international journal, they only can access for those paper who write in English, right? So if the paper write in local language like Bahasa Indonesia or in any other local language, so they call it this as a hidden literature. There's something developed, but it is not accessible by international audience. All right. So in this study, so we use a keyword like kepala, so it's meaning head or leader, and kepemimpinan or leadership and management. And then we pair it with school and education. So it's meaning that, for example, the variation like kepala sekolah, meaning school leader, school head, okay? Kepemimpinan pendidikan, so it's meaning education leadership, that kind of thing. So actually, when we use those keywords, around 3,000 more articles that identify, okay? But after doing some kind of sorting and selection, we found so many duplication, right? And then after the duplication, we also look detailed to the paper itself. It should be has a PDF file, so we can check the content. And some of the papers need to be dropped because it is not talking about education. So it's talking about business, even religious affair, right? So management, okay? So at the end, we have collected around 199 articles at all that talking about educational leadership and management issues written in Indonesian language. So this is the context of the methodology. Right, so this is an example of the paper that downloaded from the Garuda database. As you can see, all the papers are written in Bahasa Indonesia, and everybody can access it through Garuda database, and some of them also can be collected, downloaded from Google Scholar as well. Right, so this is the finding. So the finding is very interesting, right? So I can say the first information is about descriptive statistic. Okay, so the comparison between a concept paper and empirical studies papers nearly the same. So what we call is in terms of numbers, close to 50-50, right? So in terms of empirical study, so most of them are nearly similar in terms of that qualitative and quantitative. But in this case, more paper are using qualitative approach, right? And another interesting finding is that more than 87% published after 2013. Okay, so can you imagine we do some sorting and selection in the last 20 years from 21 to 2021. Okay, for that 20 years, most of them published after 2013. So why? I think for Indonesian audience, you already know that in 2013, Directorate General of Higher Education require lecturers and postgraduate students to publish in academic papers. So that's make that the massive publication starting from that year, right? So it is indicated that Indonesian context of education, leadership, and management is contemporary, right? And we can say that papers from Java are really dominated compared to the other island, okay? And most of them are talking about general education. It is not specifically to the certain level, okay? If we look to the concept papers, okay, prior to 2013, most of them are talking about normative values, what you have to do if you are a principal, okay? And then because this is the first years of autonomy era, educational decentralization, they also talking about what should you do if you are a principal in this decentralization situation, right? After 2013, the topics a bit changed. So there are many leadership style provided. So it's like strategic leadership, entrepreneurial, curriculum leadership, this kind of thing. So it is showing that after 2013, the increase of the topics also showing the broad many ideas that exercising by Indonesian researcher. Okay, another salient point in this case is that Indonesia, 87% of Indonesian are Muslim. So around 25% of the papers have an Islamic educational research topic inside it. Okay, so this is a growing topic that also we have to look closely about what kind of issue they discuss. Okay, is it really showing some things about the projection what will happen in Indonesian education? If we look to the empirical study papers, so 62% are using qualitative approach. Okay, and to my surprise, even the topic, the approach is qualitative, but the content of the papers more and more discuss about educational management, right? So it is very strange for me as a researcher, if we compare to the approach itself. So researchers who choose qualitative approach tend to initiate that the research more than just discuss about educational management. So it should be about find something new about the context of leadership. Okay. So what we found in terms of this those papers, so instead of generating new theories, more of many papers is just only what we call borrowings, theories, models, and styles from international literature. Okay, and what are also we found in the data analysis is really their lack of what we call respondent voice, like quotation statement. So most of them is what we call researcher analysis inside it. Okay. Another favorite topic for Indonesian researcher in this category is they emphasize about musyawarah. Okay, it is a kind of what we call values in Indonesian society. Right. So if we look to the empirical study papers, so most of them are what we call trying to do research, selecting of what we call is some variables like teacher motivation, performance for professionalism, school culture, okay, even some student achievement. So they are trying to relate those variables. And the way they use analysis tools in statistical tests is what we call heavily using correlation tests, right? And only 6 articles using regression analysis, and 2 articles using t-test and PET analysis, and 1 article relying on descriptive statistic. Okay. Something unique also what we found in this category is that even all the papers are designed using non-experiment design, okay, using questionnaire survey in order to get the data. But the researchers are free to use the term, which I think it is not appropriate to state, like influence, impact, effect, which is not in the context of the what we call quantitative research, right? So what we can learn from this is that there's a growing development in terms of educational leadership and management in Indonesia, and they have some kind of what we call need more guidance and exposure for international researcher, right? And one of the limitations that what I can say is about that it is only focused on scientific journals. Okay, we are not touching like monograph, master thesis, and doctoral dissertation. All right, so that's all for me. Thank you very much for listening, and back to Dr. Destina.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bambang, for the very insightful presentation. And to audiences, you are welcome to post questions on the Q&A button, and we will have the question and answer session after both presentations. All right, so now for the next speaker, we will have Dr. Cheryl Ryan. So let me introduce Dr. Cheryl first. I hope this time I can share my screen. Yes, this time it works. Perfect. So Cheryl Ryan, PhD, SFHEA, is a senior lecturer in the School of Education, Faculty of Arts and Education, Deakin University. And her research focus is about pedagogies of professional practice and learning for police officer, and also lifelong learning of second chance and later life learners in neighborhood houses. And her recent project is she's involved with the joint Deakin and Victorian Department of Education and Training, or DET project, establishing vocational education teachers, or VET, in secondary schools in Victoria. Today, Dr. Cheryl will talk about leadership in higher education. So without further ado, Dr. Cheryl, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Destina. Okay, right. Okay, let's go. Right. Well, Hello and welcome everyone. And thank you very, very much for this wonderful opportunity. And thank you, Dr. Bambang, for your presentation. Most interesting, given that I'm also involved with a systematic literature review at the moment, and they're quite a complex task, but actually quite rewarding in many respects. So thank you very much for sharing that. Most interesting. And I just need to make a point. I do have a bit of a virus, and if I start to cough, I'm hoping I don't, but I'll try and just drink some water and keep going. Okay. Now, in this presentation, I'll be drawing on some research-informed literature on leadership to consider its application in higher education. I must say, though, quite a bit of what I will address today it does cut across other education contexts as well. So it may be of interest to some as well. Higher education sector, it operates in complex global, national and local environments within a regime of heightened regulation around policy, funding, accreditation. Universities are managing resources in dynamic, uncertain and disruptive economic, social and political contexts, and COVID-19 and the residue of its impact is still being felt by many of us. Universities are managing multiple stakeholders and competing and sometimes conflicting priorities with impacts on conditions for academics, professional staff and student work. Managerialism and the corporate business model that has been adopted by higher education, much of the research starts to, I guess, critique that and highlight the ineffectiveness of some of that. And that's why I'm today keen to look at some other models of leadership in higher education. One of the things that we would like to see, and to consider, is leadership that supports ethical and critical practice in order to help shape and address, shape universities, but also address those really complex issues and priorities that we're all experiencing at the moment. It is still very much a fluid and sort of dynamic space that we're in. And since the 1990s, research of leadership and the discourse of leadership centered pretty well in school education. And so the shift for leadership, research in leadership and the discourse of leadership in higher ed has been a more recent occurrence. And I think that given the dynamic context we're in higher education, it's more critical to have this research, and it's timely that we continue to promote research in this space. We're at a good point in many respects to be critically reviewing where we're at and where we're going. Now, I come with an offering and a premise. The premise and my offer today is for the conception of leadership as practice, as a basis for what we're talking about today. Now, that sits comfortably, the whole notion of leadership as practice sits comfortably in the broader field of practice theory. And we draw on Bourdieu, Shatsky, Camus, Garrardi, and many others, and many of you may well be familiar with those. I'm also drawing on the work of Joseph Raylan and other colleagues, Carol, Simpson, and others, who've developed what is sometimes described as a movement. But in their work, and as a result of their wonderful work, they've established the theory and application of leadership as practice, LAP, leadership as practice. Now, just to define a couple of these terms, practices are those specific sequences and episodes of activities that may repeatedly recur. Okay. Practice, on the other hand, is the emergent entanglements. I love that word. Emergent entanglements, the predicaments, the messy bits, the muddly bits, the successes that tend to extend or transform meaning over time. So practice involves practices or the activities, but practice has the potential to engender change. That's the really important aspect here. Now, I'm going to give you, before I do, here's a quote, and I thought it summed it up quite well, just acknowledging, sorry. I was trying to move myself out of the way here. I can't see all the script. New models of leadership recognized the effectiveness in knowledge-based environments needing something more than the heroic kind of approaches by a few, and that a more collaborative leadership approach, a more dynamic relational concept of leadership is needed. And I think that sort of resonates with where we're at today and where I'm heading with this discussion today. Now, leadership as practice, let's have a look at this. Practice of leadership is not leadership, is about leadership, a practice rather, but not about traits and behaviours. It's also not about positions and roles, but it's about collaborative activities of many and not the authority of one or a few. It's also concerned with where, how, and why of leadership practice, and not so much the who. And how leadership emerges through day-to-day experiences, activities, and practices. And if we think about it, we're all leaders in some way. We are all engaging in leadership in our daily practice, our daily practices. Quite often we don't see that, or others don't see that, but essentially we are. And I think that's something to hang on to as well. Importantly, it privileges the value of the social, the relational, the co-development, with engagement, and this is the important thing, with engagement in a critical dialogue. So questioning things that are taken for granted, be they practices, assumptions, language, meaning, whatever. And it is understood as a form of collaborative agency. And I really like this. This resonates. I think you think about your own teams, your own departments and schools in which you work. There is a collaborative agency where we act in relation to each other. We do things that we can't always do in isolation or on our own. So I think it's a beautiful piece of this whole consideration of leadership as practice. So everything that every individual does happens in response to, as well as in anticipation of, how others in the group have already acted or will act in future. Okay. Right. Now, I am just going to give a very quick snapshot. I thought we cannot talk about leadership without just touching on values. So some literature here, and I know I'm going to be, talking about something that everyone would be agreeing with anyway, I would hazard a guess. So leaders just needing to be able to draw on and acknowledge and also understand, I guess, their core values and their moral purpose, and especially in these disruptive, dynamic contexts and situations. It's so important. Values need to be agreed upon, shared, understood, acted upon, and values-based leadership requires, which sort of flows nicely from that previous point, where word, action, and example are together. And I've worked in organizations, and I can think of one in particular where this was many years ago, where we had a beautiful suite of values for the organization, but I often saw a discontinuity. I didn't see that we were making decisions based on these, or that what we were doing was really truly reflecting what those values were. So they tended to be more rhetorical on a piece of paper, and I think they're the really important things for us to think about. If we have a values base, how does that actually inform our practice, our thinking, our everyday work? Values and moral purpose provide a basis for why and how decisions are made and things done. And of course, the individual in this space is also important, and their values and what they bring, and their awareness of their own values and biases. Leadership needs to be understood as fully ethical practice. 4 principles. Kramer offers 4 principles, very self-explanatory. He suggests, self-reflection, identifying your own values and biases, and engaging in critical self-reflection. We can tick that one off. Balance, being open to and seeing, and I would add hearing, multiple perspectives and points of view. True self-confidence, awareness of own strengths, weaknesses, and areas for further development and improvement, and acting upon those, taking that awareness and actually doing something about it. And then genuine humility, keeping life in perspective, respecting others. So there's a snapshot of some values, all of this for the underpinning of the discussion now, which I'll take you to, which is around shared leadership. Shared leadership is a model of leadership featured in the work of Kazar and Holcomb, from 2017, titled Shared Leadership in Higher Education, Important Lessons from Research and Practice. And this was conducted for the American Council of Education Center for Policy Research and Strategy. It acknowledges the top-down leadership is not effective in today's context, and that universities need to learn and adapt to these complexities that it's facing. Various forms of shared leadership can include co-leaders, teams, and distributed. And shared leadership in this research resulted in organisations being able to learn, innovate, and perform, and created positive team performance. So significant outcomes with this kind of approach. The features of shared leadership include, it involves many individuals in the leadership. We're hearing these things again, aren't we? That leaders and followers are interchangeable, that leadership is not based on position or authority. Multiple perspectives and expertise support problem solving, innovation, and change. And I think we know that already. We would know that from our everyday practice. And even with students, multiple perspectives in the classroom, wow, what can you achieve? Much. It supports collaboration and interactions across the whole organisation. It builds institutional memory and creates a co-ownership of goals and strategies. Now I'm just going to, and I can see here, and I hope you can too, the parallels between leadership as a practice and the shared leadership. But shared leadership in practice, what have we got? Some of the things that they offer up as an example, and I'm sure we could find some more examples, identify issues, complex challenges. Perhaps they're looking at, when you're scanning the organisation, scanning what you're doing, thinking about the issues that haven't been addressed well by traditional and existing strategies, right? And then establish, what they suggest is a cross-functional team of leaders from across the campus. Not always those from leadership positions or roles, though. It needs to be much broader than that. Support structures and delegation of authority to be given to the team to enable the members to address this particular issue or problem. And it could be that the team actually needs some professional development, or there might be a need to have some specific roles within the team. And we want to ensure that the communication and accountability pathways are clearly defined and accessible and workable for them. So the teams need to have these clear parameters, but be given autonomy as well. That was the example that Kazar and Holcomb presented. Now, I want to take you to distributed leadership, and many of you might have heard of distributed leadership or read about it in the past. It's more, it's argued that it's more than shared leadership. It is a bit different. So I do acknowledge that. There are three elements that in particular Jim Spillane, or James, suggests. Leadership as practice is central and pivotal. Leadership practice is the result of interactions of leaders, followers, and their situation. And each element is essential for the practice of leadership. The situation defines leadership practice and is defined through leadership practice. So situation is not just the internal and external context. It's actually integral to distributed leadership, because situations enable and constrain leadership practice. So being very aware of situations in our leadership is what's highly important. And Jim Spillane talks about that quite a lot and writes about that quite a lot. Now, I've popped this into a chart. I thought it was the best way to do this, with characteristics, dimensions, criteria, behaviour for relational leadership, and behaviour expectations. I'll highlight a couple of, I have highlighted a couple of things, but I don't want to labour on this, but just give you a chance to have a look and scan it. I think some of the things that I highlighted in particular resonate, and I think lead back to that whole notion of leadership as practice as well. It's especially noting the behaviour expectations and growth in connection. And here it is, growth in connection for individuals where you're outside your comfort zone. You're given opportunities as an emerging or aspirational leader or someone in this space to do something different, to step outside of your comfort zone, to take some risks and to learn and to grow. And I think it's the individual growing in this particular situation, as well as you imagine the growth in connection when people are connected for the organization as well. You know, and just the words trust, respect, change, culture, people, dialogue. There are lots of different bits and pieces of distributed leadership that really resonate, I think, with the whole idea of leadership as practice and a very much a values-based approach to leadership. Distributed leadership, there was research conducted in higher education, and it revealed that it impacted the engagement in learning and teaching, it built collaboration, and it supported a more sustainable collaboration. And I think that's a really important point. Often I don't think we think about sustainable collaboration. We collaborate, we move on, that's it. Well, you know, there's a lot to be said for sustaining those kind of relationships and collaboration. What else could we achieve? Lots more, perhaps. So the collaborative and relational aspects of distributed leadership reflect the history and culture of collegiality in universities. And in this particular research, distributed leadership was seen to be a good fit for universities. It features in some departments, faculties, schools, and project teams, but there's little or no evidence of an adoption within institutions or across the sector necessarily. And I guess, you know, time will tell. We will see where things take us over time. Now, distributed leadership in practice, just to take you through a bit of that, it enables a reconfiguration of the leadership structures from those in existence, perhaps those that are hierarchical and somewhat inflexible. It gives you the opportunity to revisit those, to rework those in some way. It aligns the practice of leadership more effectively with teaching and learning, and that certainly was found in that research that was conducted with higher education setting. It places responsibility on those in formal leadership roles to establish structures and opportunities for involvement of emerging and informal leaders. And I think this is an important point. It still places quite a lot of emphasis and responsibility on the formal leadership roles. Think about this in schools, think about this in higher education, but it is also offering opportunities for involvement in leadership opportunities.
Hi, Cheryl. Your time is just
nearly there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's actually already.
Oh, am I? I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, no.
No worries.
Can I just go quickly to the last slide, and I shall
Yeah.
leave this just to say that. Okay. What I'm hoping to leave with, and I'm really sorry for this, leaders in higher education. I think what we can think about is, and I draw on a colleague's work, Professor Blackmore, criticality is needed in leadership. And by criticality, she's meaning being critical as an academic, doing critique and undertaking critical inquiry. And I think that what it leads to is my last point there, that leadership could be seen as leadership as a critical practice, not just leadership as practice, but leadership as a critical practice. And I'm very sorry to do that. And I thank you all for your patience. And thank you, Destina.
Thank you very much, Dr. Cheryl, for the very insightful presentation. And again, I remind all audiences you are welcome to post questions on the Q&A button. We will have the Q&A session shortly. Thank you very much for both speakers. Very insightful today. We heard from the side of the school leadership as well as from higher education leadership. I see some question there in question and answer box, but I didn't see anyone raising hand. So we might go directly to the question and answers. Let's see the question given from participant. I will start from the beginning of the question given. We have a question from Dr. Bambang. Maybe I can read for you, Pak Bambang, so it's easier for you rather than check one by one. So there is a question from Anissa. She's asking, how would this publication or research be impactful toward educational reform in Indonesia in terms of school leadership and improvement?
All right, so thank you very much, Bu Destina. Right, thank you, Anissa, for the question. So from what we found in the study, so it is something that also the reality of educational leadership and management in Indonesia. More and more researchers in Indonesia found out that they are using educational management as the main topic in terms of education leadership and management research, right? So we know that in terms of education leadership and management research, usually we divided very broad that management is about maintenance and leadership is about development. Okay. From the study that we found, more and more researchers discuss the topic of educational management, showing that this is also what really happening in Indonesian school. We are more concerned about management, administration compared to the leadership. So, for example, principal more attention about, for example, about numbers being spent, okay, about student discipline, okay, about is it the teachers completing their what you call as learning administration, compared to emphasize more about development of the teachers, for example. Okay, so this is a reflection of the reality at the moment of Indonesian school leadership practice. Right? Back to you, Dr. Destina.
Thank you very much, Pak Bambang, for the answers. Due to the time frame, maybe we can just jump to the second question for Dr. Cheryl. We have Muhammad Takdir here. He has a question. A good leader is one who acts based on values in every activity, including decision-making. So the question for Dr. Cheryl is, how about the leadership process, which in its action and interaction is more oriented towards political values? Can it be justified as an effort to create a good academic climate?
Good question, a really good question and a good comment. And yes, I think that you're right. It's coming back to a values-based approach, isn't it? And unfortunately, the way our systems are structured, education and other systems and political systems are structured, there are lots of, those competing priorities, those competing stakeholders have other agenda that sometimes perhaps fly in the face of the values we wish to uphold, and decisions have to be made based on other matters. But it would be great if values were perhaps embedded more so in how decisions are made, political decisions or other decisions are made. And I think that's where it comes back to collaboration as well, that the more people can be involved in those kind of decision makings and helping organizations make decisions, perhaps better outcomes could be achieved. I hope that helps. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Cheryl. Unfortunately, because we just have 2 minutes left, we have lots of questions coming to us actually, but because of the time frame, we can't answer all of that, but it's a very great ideas given from the audience. We're really thankful and appreciate that. It's a good note for both speaker and for all of us also. And thank you very much again, all audience and Ibu Cheryl, Pak Bambang for the speech today to all of us. So we are coming to the end of the program. Thank you again to Professor Jamhari Ma'ruf, even though maybe he's left the session already. Also Professor Matthew Clark, Pak Bambang again, Cheryl also, our respected audience here, that all the great ideas given to us with all the wonderful and great question, and also all the organizing team, both from Deakin University and UIII. Thank you so much for this very great event and all the organizing teams making these things happen. And for your information again, this is the first round of joint lecture between UIII and Deakin University. And we're going to have our second round in around May 2023. We will share the details to audience or to the public soon. And to officially close the program, I would like to invite the Dean of the Faculty of Education, UIII, Professor Nina Nurmila. To Professor Nina, the screen is yours.
Thank you very much, Dr. Destina. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning for Indonesian participants and good afternoon for Australian participants. Here I would like to thank Professor Matthew Clark and also Professor Jamhari Ma'ruf for your opening remarks. Also for both of the speakers, Dr. Bambang Sumintono and Dr. Cheryl for your both enlightening lectures about leadership. Yeah, and here I would like also to thank and show gratitude to Deakin's partners for organizing this event. Dr. Bonnie Yim have worked hard, with us to prepare for this event. Also Dr. Wanti, and for Indonesian sides, we have Dr. Tati Wardi and Dr. Charina Ayu. I would like also to let you know, like what Dr. Destina have mentioned, that this is our first joint webinar with Deakin University and the Indonesian International Islamic University, and we plan to have a series of this joint webinar every 3 months. So please stay in touch, and we will inform you for the upcoming events. Yeah, and I would like to close this session for Muslims. Let's close this session by reading Hamdalah. Alhamdulillah Alamin. And with it, I officially close this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Nina Nurmila. So now we are officially come to the end of the first round, this joint lecture series. Thank you, everyone, and see you on the second round of the joint lecture series. Bye.
Thank you, Destina. Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, bye. Bye. Thank you very much. Okay.
Bye. Thank you.